College football, man, it is amongst us. We got about 16 days left until the season is here. A lot of things are changing. One of the things is the transfer portal is in full effect. Everybody, it seems like, jumps in the transfer portal. Well, today we got our special guest here. Rico Knows, who is a specialist in the transfer portal and basically all things college football, man. Let's get into this. Rico, my man, what is going on?
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm just having a blast.
I gotcha. Thank you again. I appreciate you taking the time. So, first off, let's tell everybody, number one, who you are. And I know a lot of people know, but just to introduce some of my fans out there and listeners, tell people who you are and where people can find you.
Okay, so my name is Rico, right? Rico, I have the same first and last name, but everybody knows me as Rico Knows because apparently I know everything that you're wondering, right? If you have a question about sports and you go, man, I don't know who knows this. Rico knows. Go ask. So that's kind of what I'm known for. But you can find me on TikTok, just Rico Knows. Look it up. 1 word, 2 words, doesn't matter. It's going to come up. And you can find me on YouTube, Rico Knows. But anybody else pretending to be me, it's not me, right? There's a lot. And there's some people out there giving fake advice, fake sports tips and things of that nature. Apologize, just got to pop up here on my cam. But I also just started on Twitter. So I started on Twitter. I have, I think it's Rico Knows TikTok, all one word. And I'm going to start tweeting during games because people just want to know what I have to say during the games. This has been a really big deal during preseason.
Right.
Because all those guys on the fringe of the roster that nobody else knows about. I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been following this guy for 10 years, whatever it is, since high school. So
right.
I'm excited about preseason football more than anybody. I'm excited about college football and the group of 5 teams more than anybody because I follow every team in America. That's what makes me unique compared to the others. So appreciate it.
Yeah, man. The thing about it for me is that your knowledge on people jumping into the transfer portal. So let's just start there. A lot of people don't like the transfer portal, and then there's a lot of people that do like it. Look, being a former football player, college football player at Kansas State, I think the transfer portal would have been outstanding to give guys an opportunity. Yeah, you make a mistake, you leave, blah, 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 or either you make a mistake or maybe it just wasn't the right fit. It's tough making the perfect decision at 18, 17 years old to go, to a college. So the transfer portal is great. I think there's some changes, and we'll get into that here in a minute because they actually did make some changes to it. So tell us a little bit about your familiarity with the transfer portal and how, the research that you do is incredible, but kind of give us a little bit on number one, your thoughts on the transfer portal, on how it works, and just your knowledge and background of it.
I appreciate you asking the question, Brian, because a lot of people just vilify it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
You just say transfer portal, NIL, ruining college football.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it is saving college football programs, right? When you look at programs like Florida State or USC being just doormats for the last 10 years or so, and then out of nowhere, they're now relevant on the national scene again. Right now, power conferences want to have them and move to their conference, which is just a problem for certain programs. So it saves certain schools. Here's what I'll say. In the 80s and 90s, when you recruited a player and you missed on that player as a coach, the only avenue you had was to ostracize the player.
Right.
To come up with rules to make them feel like they were no longer wanted there. So you had to, what we call it is processing the player. You would try to process them out of the system. So you would then call a meeting out of nowhere and wouldn't inform that one player. And then you could say, hey, you missed this meeting. And that's a ding on your record. And if you miss 3 meetings, you lose your scholarship. Because we can't have you lose your scholarship for academic reasons, we can come up with other reasons, right? Now, athletic scholarships are no longer 4 years locked in, full ride scholarships. They're annual renewals. And with these annual renewals, and under the guise of budgeting, we have to do this annually to make sure we're in accordance with the budget. You already budgeted for 85 scholarships per Title IX. Every team has 85 scholarships. But the way these coaches are doing it now with the transfer portal is they are going out in public on TV complaining that the portal has ruined college football.
Right.
What they aren't telling you is they're sending kids to the portal
Absolutely.
against their will. When they miss in recruiting, they send that kid to the portal. They have an exit meeting in June. You know how many players I talked to this year? The players talk to me every day. I'm going to go as far as saying 50 different Division I football players DMing me saying, Rico, I didn't want to go to the portal. I was forced to go to the portal. I had no desire to go. Coach called me and said, hey, you can't be here anymore. We're going a different route. And they sent the kid to the portal. So I think the portal is a godsend for players who aren't wanted on certain programs, right? And I think it's a benefit to coaches that enables them to turn over their roster, shout out to Coach Prime, and go and find the right player for the right fit. Where it's a problem is these players are jumping in the portal and only talking to teams that they're familiar with.
Correct.
So if you were a 4- or 5-star player coming out of high school and you didn't pan out, meaning you weren't really a 4- or 5-star talent, they just assigned you stars in the recruiting process, the young man is still getting advised like he is a 4- or 5-star player, and he's not. And he's not. And he needs to be realistic about his expectations, his capabilities. And when you hit that transfer portal, I was talking to a young man 2 months ago, and I told him, I think you should transfer to Western Kentucky or South Alabama. He's a quarterback from a Power 5 school, from Louisville.
Okay.
Caleb Johnson's his name. He was in the transfer portal. He and his father reached out to me, said, hey, Rico, you know all the teams. What can you do for us? What can you talk to me about? And I said, Western Kentucky, South Alabama. Both of them have quarterbacks that are in their final year of eligibility. They're going to be leaving soon. They're both quality programs. I love their offensive coordinators, their coaches. I explained everything to them. He said, okay, we'll look into it. Got offers from both schools. And at the last second, got a phone call from Charlie Weiss Jr., Ole Miss. And they drank that Kool-Aid. They talk about snake oil and all this stuff. They drank the Ole Miss Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go on a visit. He went on a visit, took all the fancy photos. They started sending me all the photos. Rico, we made it, man. We're going to the SEC. And I was just like,
yeah.
And who's on that team?
Yeah.
They don't really want you. And at the last second, you know what they did? They said, hey, Caleb, we would like you to do a preferred walk-on.
Oof.
Exactly.
I remember.
And now they call me back, and they're like, Rico, I can't believe this. He got a preferred walk-on offer. And that while they were doing this and debating what they were going to do, Austin Simmons, a high schooler, reclassifies 2 grades up and commits to Ole Miss, and he's there right now on that scholarship that they want to give him. And Caleb Johnson is now at Blinn Junior College. Thank God he won the quarterback battle, but he's now starting out of junior college when he could have been at Western Kentucky or South Alabama. And the sad reality of the transfer portal is coaches are making offers to everybody, and those offers are not, they don't last forever. So when people tell me how many offers a kid has, I reach out to them and say, hey, are you still have those offers? No, I don't. That they pulled that back. That's not available. And this is why when I make predictions over where a kid's going to go in the transfer portal, I really hit. And people want to know why. Because I'm not going to 24/7 and on 3. I'm going straight to the source and asking them, where do you plan on going? What are you going to do? And if I get an answer, I don't report it as I just heard from so-and-so. This is where he's going. Nope. I just sit back and say, I believe this is where the kid's going to end up.
Absolutely.
Right. So, yeah, I love the transfer portal. I think it's saving programs, and I think it's saving players' careers instead of sitting at a school where you're not wanted. Right. Because that's a terrible situation, even for your mental health.
Yeah, and that's what I've tried to convey to a lot of people. I talk to people all the time, and they're just like, man, it's just what you said. It's killing college football. It's killing college sports. I'm like, no, it's not. It is not killing college sports at all. I go, the transfer portal is a great thing if used correctly. I go, but the bottom line is, it's been going on without the transfer portal. It was the same thing. Guys were making horrible decisions long before the transfer portal came on. They were going to the wrong school in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s that they just couldn't get out of. And you know what a lot of those guys did, Rico? They quit football or they quit basketball, and they just didn't do anything because they couldn't go anywhere. Well, now at least they have an opportunity to say, you know what, I still want to play. I still love it, and I can get out and go somewhere. Everything, there's not roses to everything, so I'm not trying to say that. But what I'm saying is it just gives guys and girls other opportunities to do things that previously they literally had no option.
Yeah, and there's two things about the transfer portal that we can't really call out and say in public because nobody wants to admit it. But the numbers they quote of the players lost in the transfer portal or stuck in the transfer portal, that's all sports. It's not just football players.
Exactly.
So 7,000 players are in the portal. It's not true. Only 1,700 are football players. Everybody else is softball, water polo, cross country,
correct,
track, basketball. It's insane. So there's that. And secondly, when you hit the portal and you don't find a second school, people don't understand this. There's going to be attrition. There was already attrition. It just wasn't public knowledge.
Correct.
You just were no longer on the football team. You just weren't on the website anymore or on the thing. You know, there's those success stories like Matt Castle at USC who never got to start and just sat at the bench all the time and then eventually made it off a pro day and was with the New England Patriots and the Chiefs. And they're talking about the career he had. That doesn't happen. The vast majority, you know, I don't like anecdote stories. I don't like these one-offs where somebody made it happen. No, the vast majority of players went to schools, were over-recruited at certain positions, and they never got to see the field. You know, gray shirting is obsolete now.
Yeah.
Gray is only used by BYU because of their religious missions. Those players who go on missions, they get gray shirted. But gray shirting, before red shirting, you could gray shirt a kid. And if you signed him in the recruiting class, he didn't count against your 25. Remember, every single year you get 25 scholarships, initial entry scholarships. That includes junior college players.
Mm-hmm.
So junior college is not transfer portal. Junior college and initial entry high school recruits are all 25. And you would go in there and you'd say, yeah, I'm part of this 25. And the coach would make you gray shirt. And when he makes you gray shirt, you're not a part of the team. You can't go to practice. You're just a student at the university. And you don't count against that year's 25. You count against the following year's 25. You start with the football team in January after the football season. And these kids are signing to these beautiful schools, their dream school, Alabama. And then they get to National Letter of Intent Day, and Nick Saban calls and says, hey, by the way, you're not going to be on our 25 this year. You're going to be on next year's. And you look at it as a young man, as a kid, you've been telling all your friends and family you were going to go to Alabama. You're committed to Alabama. You had the big conference and the confetti and the balloons.
Right.
The last second, they pull the rug out from underneath you. You can't go to the public and say anything. There's one football player, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but he went to Missouri after Nick Saban did that to him and made him a gray shirt. He said, bump that. I'm not staying here. I'm going to Missouri. He ended up making it to the NFL. He's in the NFL today, so no one talks about it. But you know how many players' dreams were ruined by over-recruiting and gray shirting kids and making them stay. Now, you can't do that to a kid. You try to make him gray shirt, you try to tell him, hey, come to our program, we got you. No, he'll just enter the transfer portal. He has another way to combat against these coaches ruining kids' careers. Another thing, like when you go to schools and you're academically ineligible, that means you don't count against that 25. And that's where the coaches, if they lose a player in academics in the first semester, they can oversign. They can sign somebody else. And when you go and gray shirt a kid, you can count them against the previous year's 25, not your current 25. So that's when you would see Alabama sign 28 kids.
Right.
29 kids. It's because they were missing. So now coaches, and I know the one thing everybody's going to say about the transfer portal, and you didn't mention it, Brian, but it's what everybody talks about. Well, these teams are getting so many transfers that they're taking away scholarships from high school kids. No, they're not. No, every single team is still signing 25 kids out of high school. The only reason they didn't sign 25 this last 2 years is because of COVID. The COVID extra year of eligibility has enabled these kids that now the coaches got to fit 5 recruiting classes in 85. That's right. 5 times 25 is 125. So now you need a certain amount of attrition, and they want players to leave in the transfer portal because they're going to still sign 25 out of high school. 25 out of high school every year, and then they'll just cut the rest. Whoever doesn't make it, whoever's not in there too deep, whoever's not their best 83, they're gone. And those are the kids getting kicked out every single spring. So
right. And that'll change once we get through all the extra COVID year, which I think this has got to be the last year for that. So, and all that'll change quickly.
In 2025 is the last year.
Okay.
Of COVID eligibility. And then at a school like Virginia, they just got an extra year of eligibility for the mass shootings. So everybody at Virginia last year, because they had the mass shooting issue, every single player was given an extra year of eligibility at Virginia. So Virginia's going to have guys 26 years old playing college football about 3 years. Yeah, I'm serious. Mass shooting plus 4 years of eligibility. We're talking about 7 years in college will be the norm for all those Virginia players. It's pretty remarkable. Shout out to the NCAA. You give the kids an extra year of eligibility, but you don't give the colleges extra scholarships to carry those players on extra eligibility. So it hurts the high school kid trying to go to that school because there's no scholarships available.
Right. There's no room. I get it. It. Now, a couple of changes that I shouldn't say a couple. I know these are changes that a lot of people, myself included, that have just kind of been screaming about in the transfer portal is like, look, the transfer portal is great, but just make it so they can't transfer 85 times. Look, you transfer one time, and then if you want it, you can transfer again. You absolutely can. But you know what? You get 4 years or you get 5 years to play 4. So if you want to transfer again, you got to sit out. And finally, the NCAA made the change and said, look, we're not just granting these waivers because everybody was coming up. You know, now granted, there's some circumstances where people's family members were getting sick, but there was also people out there lying about it. Like if their brother had the flu, they were saying, well, my brother's sick. I got to transfer home, and again, there were some real cases out there, but people started taking advantage of that. And there's got to be a line. There's just got to be a line, and the NCAA finally took it. And I was glad to see that.
I'm glad you brought it up, Brian, because, yes, the transfer portal is perverse. There's too many kids. You know how many players I saw jump in the winter, go through spring ball, realize they're not on the 2 deep, and enter the portal again. I saw at least 6, okay? That is ridiculous, number one. Number two, yes, I'm glad you were very specific. The NCAA is not automatically granting that second waiver. The first waiver is always going to be granted. They already said it. They're going to allow every single player to get a free transfer. Every player gets one free transfer. After that, you don't get another free transfer unless your coach was fired or hired elsewhere, right? Within 30 days, you can hit the portal. Or if you're a graduate transfer, you do whatever the hell you want to do. If you've earned your degree and you met your commitment to that university, you can transfer when you want, how you want, and you'll be eligible to play immediately. Now, these second transfer guys, these ridiculous hardship waivers, it's outrageous to try to get approval for immediate play. I saw a kid, and it sucks, but it's the truth. Devontae Walker transferred from Kent State to go play at North Carolina. Now you're leaving Kent State. You just lost your head coach. So I think you should be eligible immediately, in my mind, because Sean Lewis left to Colorado to be the offense coordinator. But Devontae Walker was the leading wide receiver at Kent State, and by all accounts, a complete stud, NFL caliber. Where do you go? You want to go play at North Carolina. Who's there? Drake May. You want to go play with Drake May. But you know what he put in his thing? He said his grandmother is ill. She's dying. Everybody's grandmother is dying. I want to make this very clear. I don't want to marginalize the situation, but every single player who transferred in the portal, if you want immediate eligibility and you say my grandmother's dying, bro, everybody is. That's what life is, right? So what makes you pertinent to her well-being? Are you caring for her? Are you a caregiver? Is there anything of that nature? Saying, well, my grandmother hasn't ever seen me play, that doesn't quite suffice or meet the requirement. Now, everybody's saying the NCAA talked about this rule, and they're implementing this rule, but they're all calling their bluff. When are they going to start turning down waivers? Well, it just came out. They're turning them down. And what's really cool is we're not hearing about it until after the appeal. Okay, so these teams have known about it all summer. So sometimes you'll see a team recruit more players at a specific position. You'll be like, why are they doing that? They haven't told you yet a particular player is not eligible. And now they have to come out and say, because they have to put out the depth charts, they have to put out the rosters, they had the scrimmages. Now they're finally telling us the truth about some of these ineligibles. And it sucks because for a guy like me, I'm trying to rank them, rate them, make predictions, do my thing. And then it turns out that particular player can't play this season. But shout out to the NCAA for trying to reel this in. We're going to find other excuses. Let me give you one. You said there's specific situations where they're going to allow you to play and give you the waiver. There's a kid out of Syracuse last year who was lied to by Dino Babers and the coaching staff. And he was promised a scholarship and this, that, or the other. And this kid made, I forget what it's called, but it's like a holdover waiver. Very rare. And it got approved because he proved the coaching staff lied to him. He had some substantiating documents to prove it. Since he's transferred out, but he not only did he get an immediate waiver to play, he didn't lose any eligibility. And I think he transferred to the MAC. I apologize for not knowing his name, but it was just so remarkable to me that there are certain kids that have great excuses. Now, the Justin Fields excuse, I think, is going to come out in abundance. Remember, Justin Fields transferred from Georgia to Ohio State, and he said, well, I was a victim of racial slurs. And there's really no way to disprove it. There's really no way to tell you what a detriment that is to you as a person. I can just tell you that if I was a victim of racial slurs at Georgia University, my little sister wouldn't be going there and playing softball right now. Right?
Exactly.
So I don't believe him only because Justin Fields' little sister plays softball at Georgia right now.
Right.
Not cool with that kind of thing. So sure, they're going to hire attorneys. They're going to come up with loopholes, and they're going to try to beat the system. But shout out to the NCAA for trying to fix it.
Right. Yeah, they're doing their best. All right, so let's switch lanes here, and let's talk about Big 12 football and what's going on with the Big 12 right now. Obviously, teams are leaving. OU, Texas, they're leaving. They're bringing all these other schools in. But just talking this year specifically, look, I'm a homer. I'm a Kansas State guy. I played at K-State. I think K-State's not getting enough respect. If another team in the country that won a Power 5 conference was bringing back 15 starters, including their quarterback, their entire offensive line, they'd be in the top 10 preseason for sure. K-State is anywhere between 14 and 19. The respect level, a lot of K-State fans don't like it. Tell me what your thoughts are on the Big 12, because pretty much everybody thinks Texas is going to win it. Until I see it, I don't believe it. But tell me your thoughts on the Big 12 this year.
So my thoughts are, firstly, everything you described, a conference champion, returning all their starters, and their quarterback, not in the top 10, right? I would think you were talking about Utah, okay?
Right.
Utah's done that back-to-back years and been totally disrespected by the polls. And nobody's pulling for Utah anywhere in national media. But for some reason, they get better every single year. So when I look at K-State, I love K-State. I love Chris Kleiman, and I love what a great coach he is. But when you look at it totality and collectively, right, you have to say to yourself, okay, do they have the potential to knock off some of these other blue bloods? And they don't quite have the recruiting base for it. When you look at the recruiting classes, 46, 30, now they made top 30 recruiting classes last year. But when you get a recruiting class, they're not making the too deep. They're just added depth for at least 2 years. Then they become contributors and star players.
Right.
Much on for the vast majority of them. So when you look at who's going to be in the starting lineup and who they are, and man, I love Will Howard, but he can't complete passes. Do you know what his completion percentage is? It's underneath. Yeah. And it improved, but he went from like 55. This is Anthony Richardson status, 53, 55% to 59. He needs to make more plays. Very good with the football. Doing great things coming off the bench and saving the season. I'm all about it, man. I love K-State. They work hard. They overachieve. But when you look at the Big 12 as a whole, what you're looking for are those programs that have the recruiting classes near the top and that have legitimate chances to knock off the SEC or the other conference champs. And when you see Texas go toe-to-toe with Alabama and nearly beat them last year, and Texas' only losses were like one-possession losses, one-score games in 4 different games. Like you're looking at Texas going, man, if they can only flip this around, we'll see what happens. But I don't believe in Sark as a coach personally. Right. I don't, but I do believe in those players. I think they have great players, and I think they have the capability to be great. I like Texas this year. I love Texas Tech. I even think Oklahoma bounces back. So I think the cupboard is so full in the Big 12. People talk about the Big 12 like they're not a good conference. Top to bottom, they're extremely strong.
Right.
Everybody's great. It brought tears to my eyes when I watched Texas Tech beat the brakes off of Ole Miss. Everybody wants to talk about how the middle of each conference is the same and blah, 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 blah. No. There are just levels to this. And you can't tell me you don't care about bowl games.
Right.
Bowl games impact your final rankings for the offseason. They impact coaches' bonuses and incentive pay in their contracts. They entice and attract transfers in the offseason. Like, there's no way you want to lose your bowl game. And bowl games are so important because they give you another 20 practices. So your team can be even better than they were the previous year, right? I just think teams like Kansas State, Oklahoma State has the easiest schedule in the world. In the world.
Yeah.
If you look at their schedule with the preseason polls that just came out, which I never believe, I think they play one ranked team all season.
Yeah.
As of right now, and they play all the new teams. They got BYU, Cincy, UCF, Houston. They gave all four, and I think they have all four of them in like December. Watch Gundy go on a run and keep his job because of the scheduling. I'm so serious. So I love Big 12 football. I love K-State. I didn't have them in my initial preseason top 25. I'll bust myself out. And you came for it. You immediately you wrote to me and said, Rico, what are you doing? My guys belong in the top 25. And after I did an analysis, I'm like, how did I let it slip? And it's because they are an afterthought. Right. They are. A vast majority of media, coaches, everybody, except for homers and fandom, right? Fanatics. More power to you. But I love K-State football. I love Big 12 football. And I hope they all do great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us about all things college football today, what's going on in the world, man, and landscape. This is your thing. You thrive on it. I love picking your brain and talking to you about it on TikTok from time to time. And I appreciate it. Anytime in the future, if you got free time, I'd love to bring you back, man. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I appreciate it. Good luck with your show. Keep doing great things, and I'll see you around the way.
All right. Thank you.
Peace.